So in this video, we're going to talk about the distributive property. So let's see what the distributive property really says. So what it says is if we have a group that's being added or it could be subtracted, the only fair thing to do is to give each person in the group the exact same amount. So there's our distributive property. But of course, in math, we write things with symbols. So when we write the distributive property symbolically, we get this, that any number factor, okay, and these are our terms. So any factor that's getting multiplied by the sum of two terms is equal to that factor times the first term plus the same factor times the second term. And anytime we have a factor that's getting multiplied by two terms, which we're taking the difference of, it's the factor times the first term minus that same factor times the second term. So let's practice. So here, the factor we're trying to distribute is 4. So I need to multiply 4 times 3 times x. Well, I know the values of 4 and 3, so 4 times 3 is 12, but I don't know the value of x, so I just write it next to the factor of 12. Then I have to multiply the 4 times positive 7. 4 times 7 is 28, and since 28 is positive, I write it with a plus sign in between. So now let's look at this next one. It says the factor I'm trying to distribute is negative 7. So I want to do negative 7 times positive 5 times j. Knowing those values, I can actually remember from multiplication that 7 times 5 is 35, but a negative times a positive is a negative, giving me negative 35 times j. Then I have to multiply the negative 7 times positive 2. A negative times a positive is a negative, so I would write it as minus 14. I also could write it as negative 35j plus negative 14, but we know from the definition of subtraction, it means to add the opposite. So these are equivalent expressions. We only need to come up with one. So now I'm ready to multiply negative 5 times 8. What's negative 5 times 8? That's negative 40. And then I'm going to do negative 5 times negative 6h. Well, negative times a negative makes a positive, and 5 times 6 makes 30, and times h is just h. So that's using the distributive property.